I think I'm going to need a propranolol for this one. All right, guys, happy Wednesday. Now, we're going to pick up where we left off last week in the first court hearing. Now, through my observations and research, this is something I had to find out pretty quickly that I didn't quite understand. Briefs from opposing counsel are actually advocacy, that they're not neutral reports. They're allowed to present the facts in the light that's most favorable to their position, but they're not supposed to misstate the record. So, for example, their assertions should not be contradicted by the record. So, to my surprise, I'm walking into this court hearing as if we're in seek of the truth and what actually happened. But to me, I'm standing in court. Their attorney starts speaking. I realized pretty quick in my observation what I could understand, that this didn't feel like it was about getting to the truth anymore. So let's dive right in. Welcome back to the nursing investigation. So for those of you who missed it thus far, this whole thing started because I went to nursing school and I completed the academic program, but they wouldn't give me a degree and a conferral date on my transcript because of an exit exam. So now we're in court because I started speaking publicly about that situation and my understanding of it, and I got hit with a defamation lawsuit. I got hit with cease and desist letters. So I showed up to court and I pled my case, and we're breaking it down to see what actually transpired. The court comes back and they start talking about procedural things like motions, what was submitted, not really important to the core of the case, but really just paperwork stuff. So right now the court is just asking, was it attached to the exhibits? Sometimes it's buried in there. He goes on to talk about more of the administrative side of things. And he's saying, obviously you want to respond, meaning me, because at this point, again, I'm pro se. I don't know procedure. I did not respond yet with a counterclaim. So the court comes back and says, I think it would, like if you take it down, look, I didn't mean unless I'm missing something. I don't see a brief here. Did you guys file a brief talking to opposing counsel? Their attorney says, we did. We filed a memorandum of law. Yes. So they submitted their paperwork, but I did not, which is why I wanted to speak first to kind of get my side out there. The court goes on to say, but what I'm saying is, instead of like calling names or saying this or that like I said, most people aren't going to maybe, like if you want to bring a claim saying that you took these courses, maybe if you go back to the school and say, hey, look, the court is saying she paid $30,000 and you're saying she couldn't pass some exit exam. I don't know if this is true or not, but opposing counsel chimes in and she says, it wasn't just the exit exam. I apologize, Your Honor. It was the entire course. The exit exam is a part of a course, that one specific course at a time. And this was 5 years ago. Pause, okay? Then I chime in, because I have no court etiquette yet. I have no media training, PR training, nothing. I'm just a regular girl like you. I'm just a girl. Hard stop. I've had enough of this failed a course and this 5 years. Hard stop. Because when I hear course failed in 5 years, I'm like, okay, I get it. She has a job to do. At the same time, I thought we were getting through the truth here. I feel like we can't just tell parts of the story. Like we got to tell the full story. I chime in at my discretion because I have no court etiquette. I have no media or PR training. I don't know what I'm doing. My nervous system just goes through the roof. Like I need a beta blocker right now and I don't have one. So I start talking instead. I go, Your Honor, for my side here, it is not part of the course because it's not on my transcript. My transcript is identical to other nurses who have graduated. The court says, okay. Opposing counsel then says, and they passed the entire program, but not. So I cut her off and I say, you are saying it's a course. It's not even on my transcript. It is not required by the Board of Nursing. Opposing counsel goes, it is. So I come back and I say, it is just a predictor on the school's end to see if you will pass the NCLEX on the first try, to ensure their accreditation, which is not my responsibility. I couldn't even take my NCLEX. Their attorney goes, you have the responsibility to pass the program that you signed up for. So I say, excuse me. You guys took advantage of my ignorance being a first-time nursing student. I don't know what an exit exam is until I actually go through with that. I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't know what those tests were. I didn't know it was a high-stakes exam. The court says, so you could take this whole thing and then if you like, is that like some final exam or that is in addition to passing the courses? Their attorney goes, it is an addition. It is part of the 107. Let me find the exact course name. So the court comes back and says, but it is not required by the state and it is not required anymore by the school. Their attorney goes, it was at the time she was in the program. The court goes, required by the state? Their attorney goes, it was required by our client's school. The court goes, right. So let me break this down for you. And then their attorney goes into saying, by the Board of Nursing. The court comes back and says, you have people pay 30 grand and then if they can't pass this thing, they are like, okay, it's like you never did anything. Their attorney goes, but she had the opportunity to remediate and she chose not to. The school has requirements as to when you want to remediate. You were a student in May of 2017 and you didn't reach out to us until January of 2019. The court says, okay, but what can we do now to get her license? Their attorney goes, I think my client is willing to accommodate with her to see what classes are still active and can be used to transfer to have her go towards graduating the school. But we just asked she stop with the change.org petitions because there are other potential students writing that they no longer want to go to the college. So the court comes back and says, well, what I would say is this, and it's up to you, Clarissa, because you have to, respond to theirs, and then we will have like a legal argument as to, you have First Amendment right, but on the other hand, if things you are saying are not true, then you end up in the Chancery Division, which, just so you understand how law works, there's a civil law division, which is like, say if you had a car accident or somebody sues you for libel or slander, those are money damages. They are not right now suing you for money damages. This is the court of what they call court equity. They are filing a complaint to have you remove the stuff and not put the stuff, if all of a sudden you are, sued for slander or libel, I don't think at this point in your life you need that. On the other hand, she may have First Amendment rights. And, I get these cases, people say, oh, they put it on Google. I had a law firm come in, they put a negative review. I'm like, all right, well, am I going to be the gatekeeper and say you can't post stuff online? Their attorney goes, no, Your Honor, we have no problem with the negative reviews, but when she makes comments like, I reached out to the Board of Nursing, and because of me, they had to change their curriculum, that is just a flat out lie. So I chime in, right? No beta blocker, just all mouth. Where did I say that? Their attorney goes, you say it in your change.org petition. And I say, where? Can you show me exactly where I said that? Their attorney goes, we've since had the change.org remove it. I go, that is not true. Their attorney goes, and I can provide you with a copy of it. The court stops us and says, all right, we will sort that out. Things got a little heated today in court. First of all, let me show you through my observation, my understanding, my interpretation of what's going on and how that relates back to my experience. So in my eyes, when she talks about a course, what course was it? It was not a course because it would be on my transcript, which it is not. Okay? Second thing, it was or it wasn't required by the Board of Nursing because I have this NJ admin code here, 1337-121, saying A student's performance on an exit examination should not prevent them from graduating, therefore getting their license. And if you want to say, oh, this didn't come into regulation until years later, fine. But you know what troubles me? The proposal started in as early as 2020. So how did that come into play if the Board of Nursing approved using exit exams to prevent students from getting their license? That's just a question I have. Secondly, if you're saying I was withdrawn in January of 2019, why in January of 2020, as far as public records show, schools were put on notice about this way of doing things, and who knows what happened prior until we get into discovery. I just find it really coincidental that I graduate in 2019 and I cause this big uproar and I say, hey, what can I do? There's nothing I can do. I'm like going to the state. I'm like going to lawyers. I'm like, what is there to do? And I'm sure, I believe I am not the only one. Those students who do not pass the predictor examination are not allowed to graduate so that they will not adversely affect the pass rate for the program and endanger the program's accreditation status. The board is troubled by this situation in that students who have otherwise qualified to graduate are kept in the program so that the program will not lose accreditation. The board does not oppose to the use of examinations to assess how well a program is preparing students, but is opposed to students being prevented from graduating solely because their school might lose accreditation. So, when you sit here and tell me that the board was always in support of this, I beg to differ. And that's how we came into the NJAC 1337-121. I digress. She goes on again to talk about, oh, it's been 5 years. I'm sorry. Every time I hear 5 years, I feel like I'm in the twilight zone. So, when a student pays you approximately $30,000, and at the end you tell her she cannot graduate because she didn't pass an exit exam, essentially believing in her observation her credits are now void and she has to retake the entire program. She believes you. You have authority. She trusted you. So she says, all right, well, I'm not doing that and I'm not going back here because now I don't trust you. I don't know what's going on. So this student who took years to save up and put herself in a position to do that now has to do the whole thing again and account for double of the debt. So she takes the next 3-ish years to do that. The math is mathing for that. That's the same amount of time it took her to do it before, so she'll do it again. So then when she starts reaching out to schools in 2023, 2024, they look at her like she's a dog barking because they're like, why are you trying to retake a program you already completed? You need to go back to your school. We're not taking your credits. So I'm already confused. We'll get into that aspect later, but as of right now, as far as the timeline, get me. What was I doing? I was under the impression everything was void. Until somebody made me question it years later when I'm believing I have to go back to school and redo everything, and now I'm being told to go back to where I started and go get that diploma. So that's exactly what I do, and that's why the grievance letter came back to me in 2024. So it wasn't just like I woke up some random day and I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to call them again. I really love them and I want to speak to them so much. That's not how it worked. That's not actually what happened. I didn't just wake up one day and say, hey, remember me? Yeah, can I have that now? No, I was under the impression everything was void and there was nothing I could do except redo nursing school all over again. And when I tried to do that, I was told from other institutions, I completed everything the board requires. Why am I trying to retake a program I already completed? Could you imagine what that felt like? How dumb I felt? What that felt like, what that could feel like as an admissions representative having to tell a student, oh no, honey, you need to go back there. And we're not taking your credits either. You have no choice but to go back to that school. What is going on? Because I didn't know all of that. We'll get into that. We'll get into the credit transfers at a later date. But as of right now, we're talking about the timeline. So, second to that, when I do find this information out, I act immediately. And that's where the grievance letter came into play and how this all unfolded. Because to my surprise, when I find this out, wouldn't you be shocked too? And of course, now that I know, the school never wrote me a letter and said, hey, turns out we can't do this anymore. So here you go. Now, in my observation, in my opinion, what I think, if something happens like this, I feel like, for integrity purposes, the school should reach out and be like, hey, this is what you need to do. Take a refresher course, and then we'll give you your diploma, go sit, and all the things. That's just my opinion. So, also, this isn't something the average person would know. How would I have found out if my own school wasn't willing to tell me those changes? And then just because the regulation happens afterwards doesn't make everything done prior okay. This is showing me that behavior that was taking place, the board was troubled by it, so much so they had to come out with a regulation saying not to do this. So forget 2017 to 2019. Forget it for a moment. We're in 2026 and this regulation becomes law in 2022. In its plain language, it says, I cannot be kept from graduating over an exit exam. So to me, in my observation, you are still doing that to this day. And then what I come to find out is what First Amendment rights are. When you don't know your rights, you're easily manipulated into giving them up, especially being a pro se litigant. When the Bill of Rights was added to the Constitution, it gave power back to the Constitution. People think that this was given to us by the government, but we had it the entire time by God, whoever you believe that to be, our Creator. The government's purpose is to secure those blessings. That's key here. So when he talks about the First Amendment rights, I have no idea what he's talking about. I know what they are, but I've never researched First Amendment rights since high school. So your First Amendment right, we have what no other sovereign state in the world has. Think about it like this. I'm going to dumb it down, make it easy, give you some sort of analogy. Back in the day when discrimination was happening and we have K, and the leader of that was this Brandenburg guy, okay? He called up the press basically saying, this is what we're going to do to every Black American and Jewish American, and you should too. This was his speech. This is what he gave to the press. He told them his plans, what he wanted to do, his feelings about the whole thing. The leader, Brandenburg, was then sent to prison. The Supreme Court, though, the layers of our land, overturned this decision in violation of his First Amendment rights. So, certain speech is protected by your First Amendment right. Hate speech is not illegal. The only speech that is truly prohibited is imminent lawlessness and its likeliness to cause imminent lawlessness. Then you're like, Clarissa, how could this be? Even the most evil speech of all can still be protected? I know, but hear me out. The best trick the devil played was convincing the world the devil didn't exist. So although I strongly disagree with that type of speech and everything surrounding that, if we didn't have that documentation, the world may have been tricked into thinking this never really happened, or he wasn't such a bad guy if he got or he wasn't such a bad guy if he didn't tell us these thoughts. If the most shameless speech can be protected, I think this can too. These freedoms are so essential to this case when it comes to speech, assembly, protest, or even without fear of retaliation from the government. So to me, this is bigger than a student's experience, How many others? What does the healthcare system look like because of this? What do nurses look like because of this? Shortages, debt in the economy, education? What does all this mean for everybody? Now, how does this tie into my case specifically right now? The conflict. How much can the government step in when I do have First Amendment rights? Can they step in? Now, this isn't absolute, like the court was going on to say. Freedom of speech isn't protected by slander. You cannot intentionally lie, especially with malicious intent to cause harm, right? But you can tell the truth. You can voice your opinion. You can be human without fear of retaliation from the government stepping in. This doesn't protect me from conflict, though. So also, what I understand the court to be saying, it could protect me from interference from the court and how that plays out. They'll stay out of my head, they'll stay out of my mouth, but they cannot protect me from the conflict from that other entity, for example. So here is a perfect example, I think. The court is taking a moment to think this through. Here's from my understanding what's happening. The court is taking a moment to think this through. I have to find out if she's lying, what happened, is there a solution, etc. How do we fix this? Can it be remedied? What are we going to do? He's not hearing one side from opposing counsel anymore in their brief. He's now gotten to hear both sides verbally in the courtroom. He's not saying,
madness. This is Sparta!
So lastly, she brought up the change.org petition. And I'll get into this at a later date, but let me give you a little detail on this. They went to change.org and had the petition removed. Mind you, this happened before this court hearing, when there is no judge getting in the middle of my speech. Can a judge get in the middle when the track record may become somebody silencing me over time? For example, could it be seen as bad faith? So whose argument does it really become? It's a never-ending rabbit hole that just gets deeper and deeper. It becomes about the power. It becomes about, making you feel so low. Just draining you from the process. That's how it feels. That's what it looks like to me. Something will happen to you in life, and if you do not know your rights, if you do not know the law, you can and will be taken advantage of. Everybody will get scammed in their life. Everybody will be taken advantage of at some point in their life. You need to know the law. You need an attorney on retainer. If you can't have the attorney on retainer, know the law. Spend every day learning something new that could help you in the future or help somebody you know. It's not as simple as, she signed a contract. They just don't know. And it just proves how much people don't know. It's crazy. Tara C says, so they refused to release your name because you didn't finish the semester. If you didn't finish all the requirements of the program, they can't release you. You may have to repeat the semester, unfortunately. And I think this is where the disconnect is. I didn't fail a semester. I didn't fail a course. My education is equal to of that of a nurse, of that of my cohort, of other students who went on to be a nurse. The only thing keeping me from going to sit for my license is the administrative duty on my transcript to confer that degree and the conferral date. You could also say that exit exam. To that, I say I wasn't given unlimited attempts for this exit exam to continue to take it. And although what opposing counsel has said to see if there was a way that I could graduate, I'm still waiting for a reasonable pathway to do that to this day. Casey says, based on the fact you are not giving up on becoming a nurse, that's true dedication. That's the nurse I'd want taking care of my loved ones, or someone who truly wants to be there. I'd trust you over some nurses I've experienced. Thank you so much, Cassie. That does mean a lot. To the contrary of talking 5 years and timelines like in real life, this is always something I wanted to do, that I have a plan for, that I care about, that I'm really good at. I just haven't had the opportunity to apply it, which is unfortunate. Z Mother says, a very sad experience. Yes. Erica C says, girl, please find a way to advocate for yourself. I got diagnosed with MS my last 2 weeks of nursing school. They wanted me to repeat the last semester, and I fought so hard. Had letters from social workers, doctors, professors, sent the dean of nursing a letter to graduate with my class. I survived for a reason. It made my nursing career mean so much more. Sending nothing but hugs and blessings your way. Right back at you, Erica. Mirror Sunshine 13 says, I hope you've now found a way to be able to sit for your NCLEX. A traumatic accident that left you hospitalized should never be used against you. Which is just another piece of the puzzle. So until next week, be well, stay smart, stay educated, know the law, know your rights, and I'll see you next week.